Secretary Sydney Squire has prompted much controversy over the last few months after her Human Services Department froze Medicaid funding to behavioral health providers amid charges of fraud. Now an email she sent to members of the State Hunger Task Force and obtained by KOAT Channel 7 has set off calls for her resignation. That's because Ms. Squire wrote, quote, "There has never been and is not now any significant evidence of hunger in New Mexico," end quote. This comes on the heels of a study that indicated the state has the highest rate of child hunger in the country. How is the state going to address this kind of poverty if it is struggling to get out of the economic doldrums? Let's find out. Joining us to talk about these issues is one of our line regulars, Laura Sanchez, a little bit under the weather. That's okay, she's here. She's CEO of the New Mexico Green Chamber of Commerce. The show must go on. Another regular, Rob Nicoleski, the New Mexico Watchdog, is back with us as well. Tom Garrity, the Garrity Group, is here, and another line stalwart, of course. And we welcome a new face to the table, Jerry Klossing of the Associated Press. Jerry, where you been? We've been waiting to have you. I love it. Let me start with you on this subject. Ms. Squire had come through a number of task force meetings. I have some information from one of those members, I will not say who, that describes some of the tone and tenor of Ms. Squire during the course of those meetings. But let's start with what we know, meaning she feels like it's a slip of a tongue. The email was just not terribly well worded. What was your sense when you first read that?
It's pretty hard to take it as a slip of the tongue. I think the email was pretty clear. So, I mean, and this is all I know. I haven't spoken to any of the others that you have, but it's hard for me to believe that was a slip of the tongue. Very clear.
Yeah. What did you make of, it seemed like within a day, if not just a little bit longer, our governor was not exactly running to her defense, was she? Our governor was quick to peel this back and acknowledge, in fact, there is a lot of childhood hunger here.
Right.
What is that dynamic? I want this for the rest of the guys too, but what's that dynamic say to you that the governor's going to come out with one of her cabinet secretaries and oppose a feeling like that?
Sorry.
It's a toughie, isn't it?
Yeah, it is tough. It's hard. It's hard to analyze. I mean, we're going into an election year, so one wonders what the motivation is. Was the secretary trying to downplay the problem? The state doesn't have the money to address it. Maybe downplay the report a bit. The governor obviously knows there's hunger in the state, and so the best.
It's interesting, isn't it, Rob? How to pick up on where Jerry was at there, you know, it could not be more clear there was hunger in this state. And folks are really quite confused where she was coming from. Let me read to all of you and you at home something I received from someone who was part of that task force. I'm not going to say who it was, and I don't walk up to them in the street and ask. I'm not going to tell you. Quote, "We spent the first 4 months of the task force debating whether or not any kids were hungry. Every single meeting, every study we brought up, she debated the validity. She ultimately concluded that the only kids who weren't being fed were those who were already in CYFD's care. It was wild." End quote. How does that strike you, Rob Nicoleski, when you hear that?
Well, I mean, I wasn't there for the meetings. I think that when there's probably no good way to try to spin this thing. Right. You know, and to say it's poorly worded kind of reminds me of what Intel said. They said when they got rid of all the employees and said they've been redeployed. Right. So, and I think as far as the governor goes, I mean, again, there's no good way to spin it. So,
where does this leave the governor? I mean, she's clearly got to get in front of this, it seems to me. You know, if your cabinet secretary's got that position.
Right, and I think on the Channel 7 interview, she probably tried as best as she could and probably was able to put as much makeup as she could put on this bad situation by saying, I disagree with her, without completely throwing Ms. Squire under the bus, but at the same time saying she disagreed with it, and again, using the phrase poorly worded. I just don't know how, in these kind of situations, I don't know how you can, what you can really do. It's kind of like when, remember when Cheryl Williams Stapleton had the blow up at Nora Espinosa and refer to the governor as the Mexican on the 4th floor. All you can really do in those situations is fess up, say, I'm sorry, and hope that it blows over.
That's right, that's right. Laura, let's expand this out a little bit. We've had a lot of things in the news lately regarding the economy, which of course impacts hunger. We need money to buy food and such. LFC has revised their outlooks downward for our economy. We've got a vote to cut food stamps in our federal government going on. We've got a split in our own delegation about this. There's a lot of pressure on poor people right now in this state. Was this what some, advocates are having a fit right now about Ms. Squire's statement here? Should they be as concerned about this, or is this an opportunity to get this kind of situation elevated out there for people's understanding?
Well, I think we all should be concerned about this. I don't think, and pardon, again, I'm
Please.
getting over a cold, but I think everybody needs to be concerned about this. I think this situation highlights how disconnected the secretary is from the reality of what we're facing and what some of our most vulnerable New Mexicans are facing. You know, I really have a hard time believing that a person who has an MA and a BA in communications can misword something as simple and direct as she put in that email.
Do you buy what I was reading from our anonymous task force person? That does this fit a pattern in your view of where Ms. Squire is coming from? Do you buy the plausibility that she would actually take those positions in those task force meetings?
Based on what I've read, yes, and what I've heard from legislators and what they've observed of her behavior in various meetings. I really don't understand where the issue of contention is. I mean, I think this isn't a partisan issue. This is something that, you know, the governor, ironically enough, was obviously at a Roadrunner Food Bank event when this occurred, had just issued a Hunger Action Month proclamation, making September Hunger Action Month. So she's clearly out of step, not just with New Mexicans, but even with the administration. And I think that's something that the governor needs to address because, you know, there's no reason why you have to keep every single secretary, even the weakest link, on board the entire administration. I mean, it's important to reflect the administration's goals as well as what's happening on the issues on the ground. And this is clearly a situation where a lot of legislators are calling for her resignation.
We've had one high profile already. Senator Michael Sanchez has come out and asked for this.
Right.
Out of professional courtesy, we did ask the Secretary's Department for a response from what I just read earlier about what happened during those meetings. This is what we got from Matt Kennecott. I agree that there are hungry children in New Mexico and none of them should go without access to food or be malnourished. My email was poorly worded and I share Governor Martinez's goal of ensuring that every child has access to healthy meals. Anti-hunger measures must take nutrition into account to be truly effective against child hunger in our state. And that's signed by Secretary Sidney Squire. That feels like an even further walk back, Tom, than where she was before, because I'm going to read this part. I agree that there are hungry children in New Mexico. That's the very first line. So perhaps, to be fair to the Secretary here, is it just a process of education? Is she on board now? Is this much ado about nothing? Can she just move forward from this?
Well, no. I mean, you know, this is always going to haunt this particular department, just as, you know, past controversies have haunted this department. I mean, somehow, you know, this department has ended up in the spotlight of the two most high-profile events over the last several months, and it's, you know, I think going to continue. So you just don't automatically say, okay, I acknowledged it, let's move on. Right. That's a good strategy, but you know, the media, the people, the politicians, the people are not going to allow that because they want, you know, through her gaffe, the secretary has brought to light an issue that a lot of people didn't know really existed. And so now the opportunity is here. How is this going to be addressed? Not just at the federal level with the food stamp discussion, but you know, how is New Mexico going to respond here? Is it going to be?
Let me ask you a question on that. You're close to the business community. This is where you toil your business every day. I want to compare some anecdotal notes here. I talk to a lot of business folk, mainly technology people. Some are quite bullish on where we are right now, but some are quite panicked about where we are statewide. In Albuquerque, people are feeling more positive. Outside of Albuquerque, it's a difficulty. What's your sense of what you're hearing from the business community?
I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I have the opportunity, as I know a lot of folks around the table do, to travel the state. There is a real sense of panic around New Mexico. And I wouldn't say that people are doing high fives in Albuquerque either.
Good point.
You know, there's a real heavy reliance, pros and cons, on the federal government. And when you have federal government having as much of an influence over New Mexico's economy and Albuquerque's economy, you know, you have people literally panicking when you look at a possibility of a federal shutdown.
That's right. That's right. I agree. And Jerry, that word panic, I don't think is too strong here. I've talked to a lot of folks who use that exact word. Here's what concerns me about the Ms. Squire statements. Associated Press, report in the Associated Press, goes around the country and starts getting reported in other publications about we have an out-of-touch secretary, you know, with a relation to hunger in New Mexico. How does this play for our state? Does this play as if we're on task, we're on top of it, we know what the problems are, and we're going after it?
That gets back to the broader issue of the whole New Mexico economy that's been, you know, for years and years, and this whole endless circle of not being able to attract new business because of the poverty and the poor education. And this, I think, only underscores that. It makes it more difficult. It goes back to the reputation.
Absolutely. There's a difficulty with press people. This is an opinion table, but in your opinion, I know this is difficult sometimes, should the secretary be fired?
I'm not sure I should give an opinion on that, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Rob, what do you think about that one? Is this an egregious enough offense to make a change if you add in all the behavioral health stuff and all these other things that have happened?
I think if you look at it from a political standpoint, I think a lot of it's probably going to depend on whether what the Attorney General says when he comes back with the behavioral health issue. Now, as I've said before on this panel and other people have said, you would think from a political standpoint, since the Attorney General is a Democrat and running for governor against Governor Martinez next year, he would have every reason to be jumping on the chorus of people saying, you shouldn't have shut down the behavioral health people at all, but he hasn't.
Right.
Judging from what he has said and for what one of his employees said at a legislative meeting earlier this summer, they're expecting to have some preliminary answers to that behavioral health thing probably within like the next week or two.
Oh, interesting. That's
So
right,
yeah,
too.
because they
Okay.
originally said late September, and
That's
we're
right,
in late
too.
September right now.
Okay.
So I think that from a political standpoint, I think a lot of that might hinge on
That's fair enough.
on what happens there.
Absolutely. I
Because
can agree with
there has been so much controversy about the behavioral health issue, but there have been various other reports, even though the report itself hasn't been released. There have been
Right.
various other reports of CEOs at some of these behavioral health agencies taking part in some questionable monetary activity.
That's right. I'm going to finish with you, Laura. We got just a little bit left on this segment, but what's interesting, I appreciate the timing of September, the announcement from the government, but it also came on the heels of a New Mexico Voices for Children report
Right.
about hunger in our state that was quite damning, quite damning. I find this interesting, and they touched on the minimum wage. Let's talk about just for a quick second. Does that, we've talked about that here at the table, is that part of the solution here? I mean, is this an all hands on deck? All these different solutions have to get on the table? Is that one of them for you as well?
Well, certainly for me it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's something that we do have to have everything on the table to figure out how to deal with this. But especially when we're facing a federal action in the House to you roll back $39 billion out of the SNAP program.
Right.
I mean, that could really hurt New Mexicans, the most vulnerable population here.
That's right.
And then with the sequester, and more currently the possible shutdown, I mean, it's all going to have a ripple effect. And really those who are the most vulnerable will suffer.
Yeah, interesting. Good point there. In a moment, we're back with two young people who overcame challenges to graduate from high school and the filmmaker who told their story.